Hey, what's up guys, Jaeky here. Today we're going to be checking out two different mouse pads from Teevolution. Shout out to Teevolution for sponsoring this video and sending these out for me to check out. So these two mouse pads are part of their new Genesis series. Genesis meaning creation, which marks Teevolution's first step into their journey in creating amazing products for the gaming community. So there's going to be two different surfaces for the Genesis mouse pads. The first being their Axis pad, which is their balanced pad. This pad is designed for players who want agility and stability, giving you a harmony of speed and accuracy. So this is more of a balanced pad. You have a little bit of speed in there, but still it is pretty controlled, so you still have that control of your crosshair. Their second pad is the Gravis pad, which is their slow pad. This is more of their controlled mud pad, and this is designed for players who value control as well as a more slow experience. This will give you a lot of dynamic and static friction, so it's perfect for those who like really slow mud pads. Both of these pads will be retailing for around $39.80 USD, and you can check them out on the official Teevolution website, which I will leave linked in the description below. I gotta say, their packaging here is very nice. It comes in a double layered box, meaning that the chances of this pad being damaged during shipping is very low, and it also comes flat packed, so that means that you don't have to roll out the mouse pad itself. Opening the pad up, there's also this piece under it that goes over a quick guide on how to clean the pad, as well as some features of the pad as well. This is pretty nice. If you guys do want an in-depth guide on how to clean a mouse pad, I highly recommend watching Rocket Jump Ninja's video. I'll leave that in the description below if you're interested. But yeah guys, this is what the pad looks like right here. On the bottom is a high adhesion silicone base, which helps keep your mouse pad locked in place on the desk. This delivers consistent positioning for complete control. The Genesis series is built on a 4-layer foam core. This provides consistent surface flatness, quick responsiveness, and reliable stopping strength. It also is moisture resistant, so it repels moisture and it resists wear, giving you consistent performance even in humid conditions. This is the surface here of the balanced pad, and it's actually quite smooth, and also it has a little bit of a hard texture as well compared to a traditional cloth pad. One thing to mention is that you should definitely try to avoid bending this mouse pad just because of that foam base layer. You can see on the side here there are stitched edges to help increase durability and reduce fraying over time, so that's very nice to see. The dimensions of the pad here is 450 by 400 millimeters, and the thickness is 5 millimeters. The design of the pad that you're seeing in this video right now is actually an early unit. The final design is actually going to look something like this, which you can see on screen right now. Personally, I think it's a pretty clean design that will fit most people's setups. And as demand rises, Teevolution does plan to expand their Genesis product lineup with more variants, including different thicknesses and softness levels, as well as additional pad sizes, which is great because if you find that 450 by 400 millimeters is too small, then they will be coming out with additional sizes. Personally, I do find that 450 by 400 millimeters is slightly too small for me in terms of the width. I do find myself swiping off the pad because I do play on relatively low sensitivity. So if you are like me and you do play on a lower sensitivity, that is something to keep in mind. Personally, I prefer my mouse pads to be at least 500 millimeters wide. So let's talk about the glide of the balanced Axis pad. I find that the glide is slightly faster than my Zowie GTR, but not as fast as something like my Artisan Zero Soft XL. The surface here definitely has a little bit of plushness, but not as much as an Artisan Soft. I would say it's somewhere alongside the Artisan Medium in terms of the plushness, but the surface itself is actually quite stiff. The surface here is pretty hard, and it does have a harder feel to it. My only concern with this pad is that it is pretty stiff, and I think that if you were to accidentally fold it, there would be some creases that would form in the pad. It's definitely not a pad that you can roll up and unroll, which makes sense as to why they would ship it flat boxed, because this pad seems like a pretty stiff pad similar to something like the Vaxi PD, to where if you were to fold it up, there would most likely be permanent creases in the pad itself, just because it's sort of that foam material. But overall, a pretty solid balanced pad. Alright, now let's go over the slow Gravis pad, which is more of their mud control pad. So the packaging is the exact same experience with a double layered box, and the box inside having these little magnets that you pop off, and then the pad of course coming inside of this plastic packaging. So same exact packaging, very nice. I do like the way they package these pads. The Gravis pad here feels significantly different than the Axis pad, pretty much all around. Obviously the stitching is the exact same, and you also still have that silicone base, which I had no issues with it slipping around on my desk. The surface here, however, is very different. So it is very slow. This is pretty much, if you looked up mud pad inside of a dictionary, I would imagine this is the pad that shows up. It's actually a very unique feeling. I've never felt a mouse pad that feels like this before. It's very hard to describe, but the surface of the Gravis pad almost has sort of a sticky feeling. I think the closest thing that I can compare it to is literally Play-Doh. Like if you imagined making a mouse pad out of Play-Doh, this is probably what it would feel like. As you can see right here, even me just throwing my mouse across the pad, it barely moves. This mouse pad pretty much sticks to the bottom of your mouse, and it's literally like trying to move your mouse through Play-Doh. Teevolution highlights this as the world's most controlled pad, and I definitely have to agree with that. I don't think I've ever used a cloth mouse pad this slow before with this much stopping power. You can pretty much stop on a dime whenever you want. The dynamic friction and static friction here is extremely high, so you do have to put an effort to get your mouse moving, and your mouse pretty much stops instantaneously when you want it to because of that sticky-like nature of the cloth pad. Using this in-game, I definitely had to get used to it. I was not playing very well on it at all because I've never used a pad that felt like this. It's very slow, and the amount of friction on this pad is absolutely nuts. And that's coming from somebody who's used the OG Zowie GSR, which in my opinion is a very slow pad already, but the Teevolution Gravis pad is even slower than the Zowie GSR. Like I said, it pretty much feels like you're dragging your mouse through Play-Doh, which is a pretty weird feeling. It's definitely not something that I would use. I do like slower pads, but in my opinion, this is way too slow and sticky for me to use. If I had to describe the feeling of swiping on this pad, it's almost like your mouse gets stuck in the pad. That's basically the best way that I can put it. So yeah, I'm not the biggest fan of this type of surface, but if you are somebody who likes this feeling of your mouse sticking onto the pad and just being extremely slow, then this might be worth checking out. But like I said, it's a very unique surface that I've honestly never really felt on a mouse pad before. So yeah, when comparing the two surfaces between the Axis and the Gravis, for me personally, I prefer the Axis surface because it's definitely more of what I'm used to when it comes to mouse pads. The Gravis is definitely a very unique mud pad experience, which honestly kind of caught me off guard. But if I were to recommend one of these pads, for me personally, it would be the Axis pad. To summarize, the new Genesis series mouse pads from Teevolution are really solid pads. I think the design is very aesthetic and will fit most people's setups, and the build quality is exceptional as well. As for the difference between the two pads, obviously the Axis pad is going to be more of that traditional balanced cloth experience for those of you who are just looking for a solid all-rounder cloth pad. This is for those who play a variety of games, who still want a little bit of that cloth control experience while still having speed in order to balance things out. On the other hand, the Gravis pad I would say is the polar opposite. This pad is made for a very specific audience, for those who want the most controlled mud pad out there. Like I mentioned earlier, this is absolutely the slowest cloth pad I have ever tried, with the highest amount of stopping power and the most amount of friction. So that's pretty much it, guys. That was my look at the new Genesis series mouse pads from Teevolution. Again, if you guys are interested in checking any of these mouse pads out, I will leave a link in the description below to the Teevolution website. But shout out again to Teevolution for sponsoring this video, and I will see you guys in the next one. Peace.